From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub Podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Good morning, security gang. Welcome to our really first Monday show of the year 2025. Thank you so much for tuning in this morning. We've got a packed show for all of y'all today, so don't go anywhere. If you haven't checked out our new website, which is essentially our old Substack, cyberhubpodcast.com, you can find everything, including all of our content, all of my articles, everything there, like the ones you're seeing right in front of you. This Saturday, I talked about Putin's 25-year rule in Russia, and we took a deep examination into his demise of young democratic institutions at the time in Russia as he took over and then subsequently shifted the constitution multiple times to benefit his grip to power, as well as his views on AI and cybersecurity and what that should tell us thus far. So without further ado, join me this morning for a coffee cup cheers. My double espresso coffee cup cheers, y'all. We'll kick off with tragic news over the weekend. Those who've been in cybersecurity and have had the pleasure and honor of meeting the late Amit Yoran, who passed away over the weekend, will tell you of a trailblazer, of an entrepreneur, of a unbelievable and amazing human being. All are true. I met Amit 6 years ago at an event. We clicked right off the bat. The man was Amit was unbelievable, just welcoming, friendly, always willing to have conversations. You wouldn't think that. Amit passed away after a battle with cancer unexpectedly on Friday, and the folks over at Tenable, I'm sure, are reeling today. Our thoughts and prayers are with his brothers Dov and Elad, his family, his friends, as well as the extended cybersecurity community that really did lose a unbelievable human being. Yoran, born in the U.S. to Israeli parents, we shared a very similar background. Went to West Point holding a BS in computer science. He co-founded Riptech in 1998, which became an early innovators in using sensors for digital defense. He also founded NetWitness and served as the president of RSA Security before taking on the CEO and chairman role at Tenable. He was the first director of the National Cybersecurity Division at the Department of Homeland Security, where he honed in on policies critical to national security preparedness. Beyond that, he was recognized as the voice in cybersecurity discourse. And then he was particularly vocal on the 2023 cyber attack that affected U.S. government officials, which was part of the Microsoft Azure cloud platform. Amit will be missed, and our community is one less down, and a big one for that. May his memory be a blessing. We'll take a moment to let that kind of sink in before I move to the next story here. And we've got a packed show, so let's try to move on here as much as humanly possible. This weekend, upon learning of the news, has been a bit more difficult than others. Those who knew me will tell you that the shock and grief are run wide and deep. All right, we'll move to really the big news over the weekend, which is China's essentially abuse of the U.S. system. And apparently the White House has known about this, known about it for quite some time. And something I've learned over the years, whether it was in my service or as just a private citizen, I can tell you two things you learn. When the media starts extensively covering something, ask yourself why. And I'll tell you that because it's essentially increasing the public awareness. Well, over the weekend, both the Wall Street Journal and Bloomberg, both very massive publications, wrote a whole bunch of articles around the Chinese cyber attacks on U.S. critical infrastructure. from the power grid to the ports to now the telecom breach, the one by Salt Typhoon. And when I see that, that's kind of the writing on the wall by the national security apparatus, essentially letting us know that US actions against China will change. The tactics are going to evolve. We're 2 weeks away we're 2 weeks and 3 hours away from the inauguration of President Donald J. Trump, the 47th president of these United States. We know his administration is hawkish on China. We know that everything that has kind of been in the books is being thrown out. Mike Walls, the incoming national security advisor to the president, has already indicated that he wants to change the national cybersecurity doctrine from a defensive one, which he says is really lacking effectiveness, to more of an offensive and from a position of strength. So we'll see how that kind of boils down. But two different stories here on China. And the reason I say that is because that's what our executives are reading in our companies. So if your executives read Bloomberg or the Wall Street Journal over the weekend, if that's where they spend kind of their morning cup of coffee on a Saturday or Sunday, one has to assume that these were stories they've read. And they're starting to understand the threat to the US, but it's also going to lead to reevaluating specific business relationships within China by many US organizations. There's a part here where they talk about the hacking of the port of Houston. And I thought this was absolutely fascinating when I was reading this. So back in August 19th of 2021, the port of Houston experienced a cyber attack. The intruder, which acted like an engineer from one of the port software vendors, entered a server designed to let employees reset their passwords from home. The attacker managed to download an encrypted set of passwords from all of the port's staff before the port recognized the threat and cut off the password server from its network. And they did it all in really 31 seconds. And here's the breakdown of this attack. At 9:39 a.m., 9:39:05 a.m., an attacker acting like an engineer from one of the port's software vendors enters a server that lets employees reset their passwords. The user uploads a file that looks like a normal IT file that would track server usage and generate reports. The file, named reportwriter.js, even had comments explaining each piece of the code to anyone looking at it. At 9:39:36, the attacker leaves with a backdoor in place to get back in even more easily. The attacker then returns at 10:15 a.m. When a cybersecurity, at 10:15 a.m., so roughly half an hour, 45 minutes after the file was dropped, a cybersecurity vendor notices the activity, flags it to the port cybersecurity chiefs, who examines it and calls it a false alarm, and then heads to Whataburger for lunch. At 11:18, just an hour later, two additional suspicious IP addresses access the server, then use its connection to the server holding all employee username and passwords data to download a complete list of login credentials. And at 11:33, the attacker starts using their access to explore the network further, while the cybersecurity vendor at the time issues another warning that attackers are back. And at noon, so an hour and 45 minutes after initially noting, the port's cybersecurity staff removes the compromised server from its network, ending the attack on the port of Houston. So the deployment stage took 31 seconds. The abuse stage took roughly an hour and 45 minutes, and no one did anything about it, even though within 45 minutes they got notice. That just kind of tells you a little bit about burnout, about the ability to really kind of take in the threats as they happen and how live threats are live in our environment. So this was the Port of Houston back from 2021. But obviously this goes a whole lot there. We're talking about old Cisco routers as well. Taiwan for itself is prepping. You're obviously seeing a whole bunch of different folks testify on the matter of the Chinese threats. And now obviously finally the telecom hack. Really worth reading this full article by the Wall Street Journal. It's in our show notes. And then Bloomberg, for their end, are saying the US's worst fears of Chinese hacking are on display in Guam, where the small-scale communication network and utilities are up against what they say is an unprecedented Chinese cyber war plan. Guam is where we would likely deploy forces from in the event we needed to. in order to prevent an invasion by the Chinese into Taiwan. The Chinese realize that strategically. So they're looking at that specifically, and they're really abusing the critical infrastructure network in Guam, GPA being the only power utility on the island. Is home to roughly 600,000 tourists each year that visit the island, Cartier and Rolex stores. So a whole bunch of stuff going on in Guam, but there are military installations all over Guam. Guam kind of rests right there in the middle. And so they see as being able to disrupt the power in Guam as being a way to disrupt the potential deployment of U.S. troops from the island to support that as well. Again, a great story reading here. This is Vault Typhoon, not Salt Typhoon. Salt Typhoon Telecom, Vault Typhoon Electricity. And you can obviously see here just Chinese-sponsored hacks. And kind of this is the Council on Foreign Relations Cyber Operation Tracker. Obviously, a whole bunch there. For that end, the U.S. Department of Treasury and the Office of Foreign Asset Control, OFAC, have announced sanctions against a Chinese technology company for supporting cyber attacks against the U.S. critical infrastructure. The sanctioned firm based in Beijing is called Integrity Technology Group. I love that. I love how by the way, if you notice anything about the cover companies in China, they all have names like integrity, honesty, hard work. It's part of the CCP kind of like communist brainwashing scheme there. According to the Treasury, between summer of 2022 and fall of 2023, Integrity Tech infrastructure was used by the Chinese state-sponsored group Flax Typhoon in cyber attacks against multiple victims. They're now coming under sanctions there as well. French IT giants Atos, which is trying to recover from near bankruptcy, it's on the skits, is now dealing with a cybercrime group named Space Bears, and being listed as a potential victim on their Tor-based leak website. The attackers claim to have obtained a company database. Shortly after, Atos issued a statement saying that it had been investigating the data breach claims, but its initial analysis are showing no evidence of any compromise or ransomware affecting any Atos or Evidon systems in any country, and no ransom demand has been received to date. In an updated statement, the ransomware group's allegations, Atos says the ransomware group's allegations are unfounded. It did confirm that the cybercriminals may have obtained some data pertaining to the company, but they don't think it's a full database. Now, threat actors tend to exaggerate, but Atos is on the ropes, y'all. Atos on the ropes. Got a question here. A Rolex store in Guam sounds a strange place for that. Not really. It's a vacation spot. People spend money on vacations, and it makes sense for there to be a store there. So Atos has already fallen victim to the Klopp ransomware gang after they exploited their Go Anywhere MFT zero-day attack. We'll see if this one actually piles anywhere. Weeks after the Beyond Trust disclosed an attack spree that against a limited number of customers, but is really having a field day there, 8,600 instances still remain unpatched, according to Census. Beyond Trust in December warned that attackers could gain access to a limited number of remote support SaaS instances utilizing a compromised API key. Census researchers in a blog last week on Thursday indicated that not all of the exposed instances are considered vulnerable because the firm does not have access to the versions involved. So 8,600 still there. Tenable, for their end, says that customers must manually upgrade their software to revive the Nessus vulnerability scanner agents taken offline on December 31st due to a buggy differential plugin update. The company acknowledged in an incident report issued after pausing plugin updates to prevent the issue from impacting even more systems. The agents went offline for certain users on all sites. The ongoing incidents affect systems updated to Nessus agent versions 10.8.0 and 10.8.1 across the Americas, Europe, and Asia. Tenable has since pulled the bad versions and released agent 10 version 10.8.2 to fix the issues, and those need to be manually done. So you want to make sure you prioritize that ASAP. Scammers stole $494 million worth of cryptocurrency in a wallet drainer attack last year, that targeted more than 300,000 wallet addresses. That's a 67% increase over the 2023 figures, although the number of victims only rose by 3.7%, meaning they went after larger victims. The data comes from Web3 anti-scam platform Scam Sniffer, which has been tracking wallet drainer activity for a while now, previously reporting attack waves that impacted up to 100,000 people at once. For those who don't know what wallet drainers are, they're phishing tools specifically designed to steal crypto or digital assets from users' wallets. They're often deployed on fake or compromised websites. Scam Sniffers observed 30 large-scale attacks that they call those above 1 million, conducted via wallet drainers, with the largest single heist coming in at 55.4 million worth of crypto. This occurred early in the year when Bitcoin prices hikes fueled phishing activity. So you kind of understand the need to protect crypto assets, especially if your organization has any, which is expected. Crypto is expected to really take off under the new administration. Apple agreed to settle a $95 million class action lawsuit in the U.S. that alleges that it used Siri Assistant and it recorded private conversation and shared them with third party. The proposed lawsuit alleges that the audio data was disclosed without user consent to a network of third-party marketers and advertisers. According to court documents, Apple is set to create a $95 million non-revolutionary fund to recover payments to class members, attorney fees, and awards for class representatives and admin costs. By the way, the lawyers made like $40 million on this. You can get up to $20 pre-Siri enabled. Right, you make $100, lawyers make 30. That's awesome. Love it. Those that are in the healthcare industry, buckle up. 2025, HIPAA is really cracking down. They're adding a whole new set of rules to HIPAA, including MFA, data encryption, IM, and a whole lot more. Those rules are expected to backup and recovery, incident reporting, risk assessments, compliance audit, patch management, all coming in. So HIPAA is growing some teeth going into 2025. Obviously, after the year they had in healthcare, there's no surprise there. Buckle up. This year is going to get heavy when it comes to security regulation. India, for their end, have also opened to the public a draft data protection publication to the Digital Personal Data Protection Act of 2023 for public consultation. The key takeaways is data fiduciary obligation, consent withdrawals and rights management, security and safeguards, data breach notification, processing data of minors, exemptions for research and statistical purposes, cross-border data transfers, data protection by design, and significant data fiduciaries. They're urging anyone with interest in India's public-private privacy law to submit their feedback by February 18th. That's the hard deadline. So nothing but 6 weeks to do just that. That's it for our show this morning. This show airs live every day, Monday through Thursday at 9 a.m. Eastern. So please make sure to subscribe, follow, share. If you have any stories, you can also send those to us through our website at cyberhubpodcast.com or on LinkedIn or even through X, aka Twitter. Thank you all for tuning in this morning. I wish us all a great, great week. Thank you again. And most importantly, y'all, stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.